In this part, we're going to talk a little bit about the hollow core slabs. So when we built the floor slabs here, and we added these hollow core members, Revit basically starts from a point and constructs them. And as we get over to the left-hand side, we get a cut view over here, or a cut slab. And if I were to zoom in here, what we can see is that this hollow core slab has no relationship to the column beyond. Now, this is possible to construct this way, but it's maybe not the most efficient way to use the materials. These hollow core slabs come in modules of 4-foot widths. The lengths vary and the thicknesses vary, but the width generally is 4 feet. So when you develop the details, it's perhaps best to base the dimension from column line to column line based on the detail that would be produced through these 4-foot modules. And as I mentioned, right now, there isn't a relationship. This column, this precast column, probably wants to be centered on a joint. Okay. Now, again, you can notch these, but there's probably better ways of building or designing with taking into consideration the properties of the hollow core slabs. This image here is coming from a manufacturer that produces these precast hollow core slabs. And as I mentioned before, we often will consult manufacturers in the design process. Sometimes you use associations that also provide information about perhaps best practices and recommendations for detailing, but also the manufacturers do. And this one is noting that blockouts less than 1 foot 10 inches wide are acceptable. So what's a blockout? This is a hollow core slab. And what's happening and what's being shown with these dashed lines are the webs of the hollow cores. So the idea is that you don't want to go further than 1 foot 10 inches because you're going to disrupt the web between those kind of circular voids that happen in the hollow core slab. So again, you can make these cutouts, but the smaller, the better for the structure, the more efficient for the system. So this is another detail. Another page from this manufacturer's website, and basically they're looking at what is an acceptable what's called a ripped slab width. So a ripped slab, basically a rip cut. If you imagine that we have here a 4-foot hollow core slab, the rip cut is a cut in this direction. So basically you're cutting off this part, right? And so what this is suggesting is that certain size rip cuts are acceptable and you can maintain the sort of structural integrity of the hollow core slab. But if you exceed that, or you don't fall within these recommendations, you're creating a situation that's perhaps making the structure vulnerable. So for example, a width of less than 2 feet 2 inches. So if I was to sort of cut it here, that is not okay. We don't have enough of the component or the member to really provide the necessary structural support. But from 2 feet 2 inches to 2 feet 7, that's acceptable. So I'm going to erase this one. So for example, if I was to make a cut right here, that's between 2 feet 2 and 2 feet 7, I'm not compromising the integrity of the structural member. Okay, so again, getting back to what I was mentioning before, you can make these cuts and you can work with the system, but perhaps it's better to work more closely with the module of the hollow core slab in this case. So if we're going to work with the module of the hollow core slab, we need to move this precast column and the whole column line and everything in that, including the grade beam and the piles and the pile cap. You need to move everything over, basically a nominal dimension of 18 inches. Okay, so when I measure here, this is the column center line to where those intersect. It says 1 foot 5 3/4, right? So basically this is an 18-inch move. So how would we do this? Basically, you want to zoom out, make a window around that portion of the Revit model. Use the move tool. And I'm going to move this 1 foot 5 3/4, 1 foot 5.75 inches. Now, typically you would want to have a structural grid that is falling on more even numbers. 3/4 of an inch is not something that you would want to commonly detail. But it must have something to do with where I started my edge condition right here. So we're going to say that this is basically 23 feet 6 inches between these two column lines. And the joint between the hollow core slabs is centered on that number. Okay, now that's one change. And you can see that the piles and the grade beam also shifted. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now, I'm going to need this one though. If I want these to be symmetrical, 23 feet, 6 inches, I'm going to need to move this one over 3 feet. I move this one over roughly 18 inches. I'll move this one over the actual dimension, which is basically close to 36 inches. Okay, now when it comes to the wall section over here, I'm going to have to make a similar change. When I measure from the hollow core slab joint to the edge of the slab, I get 2 feet 11 and a half. So I'm going to eliminate that left this particular hollow core slab on the end here, and I'm going to move the wall so it has a relationship to this joint. So I'll zoom out. And I'm going to make a window around everything, including the bubble and the column line. And I'm going to move this wall 2 feet 11.5 inches. Okay, you're going to get a message, but you can ignore that. The hollow core slab is, sort of updating itself. When I move in closer here, you can see that this full hollow core slab is sitting within the wall. Okay, now obviously I've got this extension here, and I'm going to need to make revisions to remove that. The way to select that would be to tab through to the floor assembly, edit the boundary. This one is in level 2, so I'm going to go to that. I'm going to open the view. And I'm going to move, let's see if I can move the whole edge here. Move this over 2 feet 11.5 inches. And hit the check mark. I'm going to go back to my section looking north as soon as it updates. Okay, so now I have a full hollow core slab, and my topping slab also needs to be adjusted. And again, I will do that on level 2. I'm going to make a window around this whole side here, move 2 feet 11.5 inches, hit the check mark, go back to the section looking north. And there we go. The topping slab has now been moved back, and we would repeat these steps for this upper level, level 3, the hollow core slabs there, and also the insulation and membrane level above that. So I will tab till I've selected those hollow core slabs. And this time I'm going to go to level 3, open the view, and I'm going to move those over 2 feet 11.5 inches. Check mark. I'm going to say don't attach for now. Go back, say okay, go back to section looking north. And those are now in proper alignment, and I just need to fix the roof. So I'm going to click on it. First, I'm going to edit the boundary, and then I'm going to have to edit the sub elements. Move 2 feet 11.5 inches. Check mark. I will not attach it again. And section looking north. So now that's sitting where it's supposed to. And I will go ahead and edit the sub elements. So to view those sub elements, I'm going to go to the 3D view. Okay, I'm going to click on it, modify sub elements, and then I'm going to go back to, I may have to go into that again. Let's go to level 3, click on it, modify sub elements, and I need to move this one over basically 1.5 3/4. And this one would move over the same. There's actually probably a slightly different fraction, but that's fine for this, the purposes of this. I'll modify sub elements, and I'll move this over, half of 18 inches is 9 inches. So it's okay if it's not perfectly centered. Okay, let's go back to the section looking north. Okay, looks like that issue is repaired. One thing that may have to happen is your column bubble may need to shift over. So basically, when we look at this column bubble is centered. I think this one here needs to move. You can check and make sure that they look the same as the other ones. Okay, now when I go to the precast structure details, everything has been kind of reset, except for, you can see my concrete slab on the ground floor needs to be adjusted. So I will make that change as well. Go up to level 1. There's the slab right there. Edit the boundary. Click on that edge, move it over 2 feet 11.5 inches. Hit the check mark. And we can go back and make sure everything looks okay in our sheet. There, now there's the alignment that we had previously.